Well, welcome to the Everyday Discernment podcast. Thanks for being back with me today. And today I am joined by author, speaker, businessman, family man, and men's coach, Aaron Walker. He runs a ministry called A View from the Top, helping men live a life of meaning and purpose. And I'm excited to have a conversation with him today. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was great to connect thanks to social media. And, it's funny who you can meet and who you can connect with. And I'm excited to learn more about you. How's 2020 treating you?
Yeah, good. I mean, everybody's dealing with this COVID issue, and I'm about over it. I don't know about you. 6 months in now, it feels like 6 years.
It does.
So we need to get it behind us. But, man, things couldn't be better. Iron Sharpens Iron is our mastermind group, and it's growing like crazy. People are really becoming more familiar with online platforms and these virtual conferences, and everything we do is virtual. So it's really poured gasoline on what we do. And we're about to launch our 20th mastermind now. We're in 8 different countries around the world, and God just continues to bless us immeasurably. So, man, it's been a good year for us.
That's awesome. And it's funny to see how many people scrambled to learn how to do things online digitally. Just Zoom alone, which we're on now, I wish we bought stock in it, a year ago because it's just blowing up. Yeah. I couldn't even find a HD camera, a webcam. They're sold out everywhere. And so it's one of those things people are just kind of like adapting, which is also cool to see businesses adapt and churches adapt, ministries adapt to the ever-changing times. So,
hey, we're resilient people.
Right,
if we can't do it this way, we figure it out and we pivot and we make the best of it.
Exactly. So tell us more about you, about your family, a little bit about your history.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm a native Nashvilleian. I've been in Nashville 60 years now. We're 3 generations deep here. Started my first business at 18 years old, got married at 19 years old, 2 weeks after my wife graduated from high school. And we were both broke as a convict. When we first started, I met a couple of guys that had a lot of money. We partnered in a venture. And then I was very fortunate and blessed to be able to retire and sell my first business at 27 years old. And I thought, man, this is awesome. And it was for about 18 months. I started getting fat and lazy, and my wife said, hey, it's time to go back to work. So we've started over the course of 42 years, Tim, 14 businesses. The last business that I had, I retired 10 years ago. Robin said I've retired more than the law allows, but I retired. And a few of my counterparts are Dave Ramsey and Dan Miller and Ken Abraham. Some of those names may be familiar to your audience. And they encouraged me to coach. So I started coaching 10 years ago, fell in love with that, started doing podcast interviews, really promoting what we do. And to date, we've been on over 2,000 podcasts in the past 60 months.
Wow.
In helping spread our message of how to live a very successful life and a significant life. Today, we enjoy 20 mastermind groups, and we have groups for men and women. And we are helping ordinary people become extraordinary in all they do. So I'm really enjoying this probably more than anything I've ever done. I'm married to Robin. We just celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary. I have 2 daughters, 37 and 34. Our 37-year-old is the chief operating officer of our company. I have 5 gorgeous grandchildren from 5 to 18 years old. And as I said earlier, I hail from the great city of Nashville, Tennessee, for the past 6 decades.
What do you like to do in Nashville?
Yeah, I like to be with my family primarily, but I'm a pretty avid golfer and fisherman. I love to hunt also. I'm a bow hunter, and I love to fish. I'm probably on the lake 2 or 3 days a week. Nice. And I love to work. I love what we're doing with the masterminds.
That's great. And it sounds like the dream to retire so young, but you found out that it wasn't necessarily, something that you could spend the rest of your life doing. And I think a lot of times we work towards a goal without realizing that there's no purpose in that goal if it's just to obtain something without actually enjoying where we're at in the moment, right?
Yeah, Tim, what I found out, and I didn't have any money when I was young. And then when I was able to retire and sell out, I thought, well, this is the American dream. I'm going to get to coast, for the rest of my life. And all my buddies were out working and they had companies and they were thriving and they had great purpose. And I was like sitting on the couch watching Andy Griffith, and I'm like, man, I can't do this. I gained 50 pounds in
Wow.
18 months sitting on the couch doing nothing. Here's the thing. You can only fish and hunt and play golf so much. And a lot of your listeners are going, yeah, I'd like to try that. Well, as I said earlier, it was nice for about 18 months. But after that, you become very bored. I was getting very depressed. I was getting in the bed in the middle of the day because I literally didn't have anything to do. And I thought, man, this is not what I was called to do, just to put it neutral and coast. And so I was so excited that I went back and found what my true passions were and were able to go out and exercise that. And now we've changed our focus. It's really looking outward, not inward. It's not about big houses and big cars and vacation homes, although I like those things. Don't hear me wrong.
Sure.
I hate it when people with money go, money's not important. I want to be like, yeah, it is. I mean, take it away from you. Let's see how important it is. But don't make it your God. Don't make
Right.
it your sole focus. Use money as a tool to live your life like we're supposed to.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And how long have you been a Christian? What was your history with that?
Yeah, I don't have I was under the bridge, ravaged with alcohol and drugs, and had a, transformational Damascus Road experience. That wasn't the case. I was raised in a Christian home. My mom was the real spiritual leader of our home. At 9 years old, I accepted Christ. And so for 51 years now, I've dedicated my life to living for Christ. And it's been a real natural part of my life. It wasn't some big Damascus Road experience, as I said earlier. It was just kind of a natural part of my life.
Yeah, very similar. I grew up in the church as well. And it's
Yeah.
something that sometimes I feel like, oh, I wish I had a testimony that was powerful, but someone spoke into my life about a year ago and said that your testimony of God's faithfulness through your entire life is something that shows the power of God to sustain you,
Right.
where other people had the ups and downs, and those
Sure.
stories are great. I try not to discount the fact that God's been faithful my whole life. And granted, I haven't been perfect. I've had ups and downs myself,
Sure.
but the fact that I've never left my faith. And that's something that I can see God's faithfulness running its course through, like I said, through thick and thin. So,
I did have an experience I'd like to touch on just for a moment. Maybe it will help some of your listeners. August the 1st, 2001, I was headed to the office. That's almost 20 years ago now. And I ran over and killed a pedestrian on my way to the office. And it was a defining moment in my life. And what I discovered through that process is that how fragile life is, how it can change in a moment. And in the book that I wrote, View from the Top, there's a chapter in it titled Blindsided. And that's what can happen in any of our lives. We're just one phone call away or one accident away from our life radically changing. And what I discovered is that I'd had a lot of success, but no significance. And I started thinking about that, and I said, hey, I want Tim's life to be better as a result of knowing me, not just that I had tangible possessions or, fame or fortune, but I wanted to impact other people's lives. And so I started really focusing outward, helping other people accomplish their goals and their dreams. And it's very, very gratifying, very rewarding, very purposeful in my life to be able to do that. Consequently, as a result of that, we've built quite an audience, and our success financially has increased. And I think that if we do it the way that God really intended on doing it, He blesses us, He takes care of us, He'll look after us. But I think I had to get my priorities in order.
Yeah, it's a good word. Cool. So I like to ask all my guests about a time they had discernment, since that's this podcast, Everyday Discernment, so that we can learn and grow together from other people's experiences. So if you don't mind sharing just maybe a time that you had godly discernment and wisdom, and kind of what that decision-making was.
Yeah, years ago, I was pretty arrogant and condescending because I'd had great success financially as a young man, from 18 to 27 years old. And, I think back about that, and I think I read my own press clippings. I started to have a belief in my own abilities. And as I got around other wiser men, I was encouraged to really think through my decision processes and think about others rather than just myself. And back in the early 90s, I met Dave Ramsey. He was just starting his radio show. And shortly thereafter, he invited me to join his mastermind group. And I didn't even know what a mastermind group was. And I went and fell in love with that process because I happened to be the youngest one in the group. Dave's only a couple of months older than me, but the other 10 gentlemen were a year or two, and some of them 5 or 10 years older than me. And I found that by circling myself with unbiased, trusted advisors, that there was a lot of wisdom, that if I really adhered to the things that they would say, it would save me from having to experience those same trials and tribulations. And so I guess the discernment is not a specific event. I guess the discernment comes from having those unbiased, trusted advisors where we can get the wisdom of the multitudes and have a general consensus of people that have walked before me. And so I would just suggest that God designed us to be in community. Isolation is the enemy to excellence. And if we really want to propel our lives to the next level, we have to get around people with a different perspective. And so therefore, for the past 21 years, every week, I've been involved in a mastermind group to where I really listen and honor the ideas and suggestions and thoughts from these trusted advisors.
That's good. And like you said, discernment can be a one-time decision. I think of the Matrix sometimes, where the bullets come and he leans back and he sees the bullets and he's able to make a decision. And sometimes the Holy Spirit gives us a way to make a decision in a moment. But discernment can also be a lifetime of great decisions, or a season of great decisions that propel you in a certain direction, or that lead you to a certain way. And like you said, you connected with people who knew more than you, who were further along in life, who had wisdom that you were seeking. And
Right.
that is wisdom, and that's discernment right there. And in our lives, we need to look at where we are lacking, what we want to do, where we want to grow, and then surround ourselves with people that have been there, so that we don't have to go through the same mistakes again. And
Right. Right.
that's one of the reasons I wrote my book, is because we should be able to learn from the millions of mistakes that have been
Sure.
made, or just in the past 100 years. Why can't we just learn from those and do better? And a lot of it comes down to sin nature and having to do our own thing and find out the hard way. But it's wisdom to be able to not have to go through the hardship that can be
Right.
prevented. Not that we'll always make perfect decisions, but that
Right.
we can grow and learn in discernment. I talk about discernment as being a spiritual muscle that we exercise over time, because it's not something that you can listen to my podcast or read a book and all of a sudden have this amazing discernment. But you can grow, you can do better than you did maybe last month or last year. And then through God's grace, we can always learn from our mistakes and not make the same ones.
You said that it's a spiritual matter, and I think it is. And God even talks about in Hebrews, he said, for the word of God is living and active.
Yeah.
He said that it's sharper than any two-edged sword. And he goes on to say it's piercing to the division of the soul and of the spirit and of the joints and of the marrow, and discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart. We've got to think about the reasons we do the things we do. And God looks right at the motives of our heart.
Yeah.
And so I think the ultimate discernment comes through abiding in the Holy Spirit and listening to that small, still voice. And He'll give us the wisdom that He promises and the ability to have great discernment in our lives.
Yeah, 100%. Great. Well, is there a time you can share with us where you maybe did not have great discernment, and what you learned from it?
Oh, how long is this podcast? We may need longer than a few hours. Yeah, there's so many things, as we grow and go. And I know you have small children, and my children are long gone as far as being out of the house. They've been out of the house 15 and 20 years now, but I think where I really could have used better discernment is raising teenage children. And I made some horrific mistakes along the way. And I look back now and think, I worked probably way more than I should. I don't want to beat myself up, because it served me well and I did good. And there's times in our life where we have to work more than we really want to in order to get ahead. And I get that. But Andy Stanley wrote a book, and in the book he was talking about, if you're going to cheat the office. And what he meant by that is that the office doesn't have a memory, but our family does. And we don't get a second go over. We don't get a second chance with raising those kids. I mean, this is it. This is our life. This is not a practice trial run. And I probably could have used better discernment, and I probably needed people around me sooner than later that could have helped me make some better decisions. So yeah, my discernment wasn't great when my kids were teenagers.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that. And my kids are not quite there, so I might reach out to you for some advice when they get there. But I think we all can look back and see how we can improve. But like you're doing, you're sharing it with people. You're sharing your weaknesses, how you struggled, and you're coaching people so they don't have to go through some of those things, and that's great. Which leads me to a view from the top, which is the name of your website, your ministry. And I love this name because we get so caught up in the day-to-day of our lives that we forget to look ahead, to see beyond today, this week, or this month. And a view from the top, just when I think of that, I think of just like seeing our entire life from, past, present, future, where we're going, where we've been, and what today looks like. And too often, I think myself too, we think, well, when the kids are this age, when I have enough money, when I, am able to buy a second house, or whatever it looks like, when those things sometimes don't happen, or they happen at the expense of what, at the expense of working ourselves to the bone. And like you said, not engaging with those that really matter. So speaking of goals, why is it important to have goals apart from just, surviving one day at a time?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot here to unpack. So let's do it kind of deliberately. In our mastermind groups, we teach people to really think through the 5 most important areas of their life. And so I kind of broke it down into 5 key components. You have a personal, a spiritual, a relational, a professional, and a financial component. And historically, every area of our life can be couched in one of those 5 components. We do an exercise called Come As You Will Be in 2023 is what we're doing this year, because we do it in about 3-year increments. And we really think through, what would you like your life to look like in 36 months? And you're like, man, I don't know what my life's going to look like Friday, much less in 36 months. But the truth of the matter is, Tim, is most people don't even know what they really want. And I wrote a document called What Do I Want? It's one of the most downloaded documents that I have. And people go through this exercise and they go, I didn't even know to know that. I didn't even know to think about that. I didn't even know I had a choice. And what we help people to do is to identify, ideally, what you would like these 3 things to look like. And we do SMART goals: specific and measurable, realistic, attainable, and time sensitive, because if you can't measure it, then we don't know if we're making progress. And so we get accountability partners around you to understand what it is that you're really trying to accomplish. And then we use Brian Moran's 12-week year. It's a productivity tool to overlay on top of what you want to accomplish. And then we focus on the task every single day that you need to do to incrementally walk your way to achieving your goal. See, the thing is, most people focus on the goal, but they don't focus on the task.
Yeah.
You focus on the task, the goal will take care of itself. It's the consistency that you need to implement every single day. Like, if you want big muscles, you got to go to the gym 3 or 4 days a week, and you got to pick up that bar, and you got to do 1,000,000 reps, tear the muscle down, build the muscle back, and you got to do it day in and day out. Well, most people don't want to do the work. They want the muscles, but they don't want to do the work. Same way in business, same way in our spiritual life, same way with our finances. It's the consistency, and we can't do that alone. We weren't equipped to do that alone. And well as I do, we have these upper limit challenges that Gay Hendricks talks about in The Big Leap, to where we penalize ourselves. We sabotage what we're doing by thinking we don't deserve this. We can't do this. We bump up against this glass ceiling. We need people around us to help push us through those obstacles. And so we break it down in a sense to where we help you overcome those barriers, those obstacles, get those upper limit challenges out of the way. We develop a strategy and then we implement daily. And then you wake up 36 months from now and you go, man, this was amazing. I've accomplished my goals. Let's wash, rinse, and repeat and do it again. And so we get people on a real good trajectory to live their life proactively, not reactively.
That's good. And like you said, being intentional about it, not just wishing it'll happen and hoping it'll magically show up at your door someday, which doesn't happen. And like you said, isolation is so dangerous, and being in community is so important, especially in 2020, where isolation is deeper than ever. And the results, the effects of it are still like, unknown as to how it's affecting people. And some people are acting out because of the reaction to what's happening in the world, what's happening in our lives, what's happening that we can't go out and do our normal stuff. And, apart from this year, why is it so important for Christians specifically to be intentional about being in community with others?
Yeah, I don't know about you, Tim, but this has really affected me, and I don't mind being transparent about it on your show. I'm a real relational guy. I mean, I've built relationships for 42 years in business, and I love to shake your hand and hug your neck and get together and have great meals and play golf together, go fishing together, do hunting together, go on vacation. I love those things. And man, when they shut the door back in March, it was like, oh my gosh, I felt like a caged animal.
Yeah.
And it's having a real negative impact on a lot of our lives. Well, we can't necessarily even now today, as we're recording this, get out in public like we really want to. And, the scripture teaches us, forsake not the assembling of the saints, and there's a reason for that. We're to come together and we're to worship together and we're to be together. It's the way we thrive. And when that's taken away from us, it really does some emotional damage, I think, to us. And hopefully we'll get out soon. But the next best thing is virtual. The next thing is, like, you and I wouldn't have an opportunity to get to know each other. You're in Arizona, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. And although we're able to build a relationship, we're able to see each other, we can smile, we can converse that way. And that's not as good as in person, but it's certainly better than nothing. And so I want to encourage your listeners today to make a concerted effort, be very cognizant of the fact that you do need this interaction, and use virtual as long as we can. And even these mastermind groups that we do, we have people from all over the world that are participating weekly in a mastermind group, to where we have people literally on 2 different days. We have clients in Australia and we're in Nashville, Tennessee, and they're on tomorrow and we're on today for them. And so it's really kind of cool that we can interact and have this much fellowship and relational activity virtually. So I think it's paramount, but let's do the best we can with what we've got during this interim period.
Yeah. And there's a big difference between connection and community, because we're a connected generation, but we're not in community. And social media does not replace relationships. You might look on Facebook and say, I have 1,000 friends, but then feel empty inside, and like no one's speaking into your life. And there's a huge difference. And I think we get in the trap of, oh, I'm connected with all these people, but unless you're actually intentional, like you said, in joining either a mastermind or a community group or a small group or accountability group, whatever you want to call them, those are the things that will help grow you and build you up, where social media honestly builds you, tears you down more often than not. And, I love social media. I'm on there a lot, but at the same time, it doesn't replace genuine relationships and mentorships.
Yeah, we're one of the most connected yet disconnected generations that this society's ever known. And so you've got to be careful not to confuse those two. Great word in pointing that out.
Yeah, thank you. And awesome. So you spend a lot of time with Dave Ramsey. I have to ask you some questions about this. So
Sure.
I love his material and what he's done for discernment in our finances. So what can you share just a little bit about what you learned and about why it's important to have discernment with our finances and having a budget and all those things that sometimes are a trap for Christians and non-Christians alike?
Dave's a great guy. I met Dave in the early 90s, and he was at a Chamber of Commerce breakfast speaking. He was just telling us about starting a radio show here in Nashville. He was just going on the air at that time, and I went up and talked to him after his presentation, introduced myself. We got to know each other, and I invited him to one of my businesses, and he came down, fell in love with it, and he said, "This is just the type of business I would love to promote my radio show." And we worked an agreement out, and I spent the next 21 consecutive years sponsoring his show. So through that, we built quite a friendship. Dave endorsed my book, excuse me, View from the Top, and helped me work through that, and has helped us promote another product, the Mastermind Playbook. We've developed a resource to help people start, grow, and scale masterminds. And so he's done a video endorsement recently of that. So he's been a huge advocate and a proponent of what we do. And he's just a great guy as an individual. I've learned so much from Dave. And he's very, very successful now on 700 radio stations around the world. I think they have about 12 million listeners per month.
Wow.
And so he's done very, very well, but he's never departed from his faith. He's always given the glory to God for his success. They've been the number one place in Tennessee to work, I think 15 consecutive years. They have over 1,000 employees now. And so he's done an amazing job, and he's been a very good friend and a very good mentor. And just seeing how he sticks to his principles, he supports everything he does scripturally, and being around him, just using common sense in our finances today, spend less than you make, do the things your grandma taught you to do, and they work. I mean, we can't get away from the fundamentals of finance, and Dave just really does a good job in doing that. So it's been a real honor and a blessing for us to have been friends now almost 3 decades.
Yeah, that's cool. And like you said, it's sometimes so simple what he offers, but in a culture that tells you to charge it and overspend and to buy what you want, not what you can afford.
Right.
It's really a good reminder to us all that a lot of times we get sometimes a vision before we get the means.
Right.
And I think you mentioned at the beginning where, money's not evil. It's the love of money. It's when it becomes an idol in your life. And there's nothing wrong when you put things in the proper perspective and God is your priority, then everything else kind of falls into play, and being good stewards of what we're given and to be able to be generous. I think it's very important that we're generous. Having discernment doesn't just mean having a good budget. It means being generous with what God has given you. We're blessed to be a blessing, right?
Right. When I was a child, my family wasn't very good business people, but my mom came to me once I was saved, and she said, "You're cutting these lawns and you're working at this little grocery store, and let me just encourage you, the best financial advice I could ever give you is to be sure to give God what's his first, and that is a tithe."
Yeah.
And she explained to me what a tithe was, and encouraged me to read Malachi chapter 10, where it says, or 3:10. I've got them back. Yeah, it says in there, don't steal from God what's his. Give him what's his. And so we've done that now. We've given 10% of our gross income for the past 51 years, and God is so honored it. He's been so faithful, and he can do so much more with 90%. Than I can do with 100%. And so, I just want to encourage your listeners today that it's the basics, kind of like what Dave was teaching, just be honorable. You're a steward over what God's entrusted you. And long as you operate with an open hand, not a closed fist, and you do the things that he instructs, he'll always take care and honor it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that in my life. And it's also important to remember that it's not just, I'll do better when, I'll give more when I have enough. because it's never enough. when you make more, your standard of living goes up, and then it doesn't seem like you have enough then either. And so be faithful now. The Jesus example of the widow that gave so little, but it was all she had. And that meant more because it was her heart than all the Pharisees that put in a ton of money.
Right.
And so God will honor it, even if it seems like a little bit. If you're being faithful with your 10%, then that's just walking in obedience. God will always honor obedience.
Here's the thing I hear a lot, Tim, and I know a lot of people even listening to us today are thinking this, like that's not something I participate in. And the answer that most people give is, well, when I make a little bit more, then I will give and be generous. And I simply say that money doesn't change the heart, it magnifies what's already there.
Mm,
And so, if we're not being stewards and honorable with a little amount, how do we think that we're going to be stewards and honorable with a larger amount? And I look at it as though it's our conduit size. Like God gives us a certain amount, He sees that we can handle that, we're good stewards, and He increases the conduit, He increases the opportunity. And I think that when we're faithful with a little, we can be faithful and trusted with a lot.
yeah, absolutely. Very good. So you help mentor a lot of men. What are some things you would say to any man listening right now on how to be a better man, better husband, and live a life of purpose?
Yeah, I think that's a process. I don't think it's something that we can master overnight. I think that it goes back to what we've already talked about, being in community. We all have challenges. We all have difficult days. We have times that we stray. And when we're left to our own devices without any kind of counsel or without any kind of accountability, it's easier to stay off track. But when we surround ourselves with accountability partners, small groups, connect groups, masterminds, people that are going to hold us accountable, they're going to miss us when we're not there, they're going to ask you the tough questions. For probably 25 or 30 years now, every Friday, I've met with three gentlemen that ask me the tough questions, and they ask me very personal questions, and I offer them answers, and I want to be truthful, and I want to be a man above reproach. And so it keeps me in check during the week when I know that I'm going to be asked these questions. On Friday mornings, I want to be very intentional about the answers that I give. And I certainly don't want to go in there and lie to these guys. And it's just kind of a course corrector. It gives me the ability and the strength to make the right decisions. But when we're left alone and no one ever asks us those tough questions, we rationalize things. We watch things we shouldn't. We say things that we shouldn't. We go places that we shouldn't. And now we're living in the darkness. And I think God says when we shine light in the darkness, the enemy doesn't have hold on our thoughts and our actions. And so I think that we need a level of accountability, people shining the light in the darkness. And so I would just encourage, as we've said previously for 45 minutes now, we need people around us.
Yeah.
We just need to subject ourselves to the scrutiny of other people and get qualified people around us that can help us live this thing that we're doing called life.
Yeah. Very good. And what about for married couples listening, for wives that are listening that want to help their husbands in a way and encourage them and do so in a way that will make the husband want to listen? Because a lot of times we can be stubborn and,
Sure.
we don't respond well to nagging, but at the same time we do. I know if my wife comes to me with a concern or she wants to pray for me or I want to do better. And sometimes I beat myself up when I realize I'm not doing what I
Yeah.
should, or if I'm not leading the family like I should, or if we're
Sure.
not praying together like we should. And sometimes that causes me to shut down, or sometimes it causes me to, push others aside. And so
Sure.
what is a good way for a married couple to be
Mm.
in community together and to build each other up and to spur each other on?
Yeah. Very good. As I said earlier in the introduction, Robin and I were just married 40 years. And we've had our trials and tribulations, our ups and downs. And thank goodness we're both believers and we have a common denominator there. We can always go to the Lord on our knees and it levels the playing field. And so I would simply first state that if you're a believer, praying with your spouse, and I haven't done that 100% of the time, but the times that we do, there's a real intimacy that forms in our relationship. The other thing is that Robin and I've done for decades now is to see a counselor.
Mm,
And even when things are good, because we don't want to miss something, I'll go, she'll go, we'll go together. I want to be sure that we're not missing anything because we don't get an opportunity to do this again. And we want to do it right as we go through it. So I would simply say there's nothing wrong at all. It's kind of like having a coach, somebody that can help strengthen your relationship. So there's nothing at all wrong with going to see a counselor. The other thing, there are great books out there. There's one called Love and Respect. Women Need Love, Men Need Respect. It's a great book. Chris Voss wrote a great book called Never Split the Difference.
Mm.
And this book really teaches you how to negotiate, not in a bad way, but in a good way. It helps you to understand the right things to say. There's a scripture that I tease with oftentimes, and it talks about it's better to live on the corner of a roof than to live with a nagging wife. And nagging is never going to get you anywhere.
Right.
What your husband needs is encouragement. He doesn't always deserve it, but
Right.
what he needs is respect because he doesn't always get it. And you're like, well, he doesn't deserve respect. Well, withholding it from him is not going to increase his ability to earn it. And so I would just simply say, these are things that you're doing that are bothering me, and I want to honor you and pay you respect. But at the same time, there's some obligations and responsibilities from my vantage point that you're not fulfilling. And it would be easier to give you respect if you would consider these things. Robin and I decided decades ago not to yell and holler and slam doors and leave the room. That never serves you well. Some of the other things that we do, and I'm getting a little bit personal here, but our bedroom is our sanctuary. It's off limits to any videos that we form in promotion. It's off limits to other people. There's no pictures of anybody in our bedroom but Robin and I, not our children, not our grandchildren. There's just pictures of Robin and I. There's no electronics in our bedroom. There's
Mm.
no TV.
Yeah.
We don't work out of our bedroom. We don't scroll on Facebook laying in bed. We go to bed together. Now, there's times, where I'm not feeling well or she's not, and we'll go to bed separate. But for 40 years, 99% of the time, we go to bed together. We don't argue in the bedroom. We'll argue or have our disagreements in the den or standing in the kitchen around the island. But that is a safe place for us. We go there to rest and to relax. And so I would just encourage all the married couples to have that safe place, to have a place that is your sanctuary, that's off limits to anybody but you and your spouse. And then other things that I do, Tim, for me personally, is I don't do any social media with women at all. I don't travel with women. I'm never alone with women. I'm an author and I'm a speaker. I travel around the world speaking and talking primarily nationally, not internationally, but I never take pictures with women alone. When I autograph my book, I give it to them, but they're always wanting to take pictures. They're going to post it on social media, but I honor my wife in saying, hey, I don't take pictures with people, other women, and you're like, you're an extremist. No, I love my wife enough to honor her.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do the things to honor her. And so I think that once you do that, men, you'll earn their respect. And oftentimes, Tim, when I tell women, no, I don't take selfies with women, and they get mad until I explain, I'm say, listen, you're going to post this on social media, and I've got my arm around a good-looking blonde, and I'm in San Diego at a conference speaking, and my wife is at home in Nashville.
Yeah.
How well do you think that's going to make our marriage forge even deeper? It's going to build a sense of distrust, and it's possibly going to forge a sense of jealousy. And I say, I love my wife enough to respect her. And invariably, the women say, I wish my husband felt that way.
Yeah.
And so I think we've got to do things like that in order to gain their respect.
Yeah, that is discernment. And it, like you said, it might seem extreme to someone, but there has been examples in the news just even recently. I'm not going to say who, but pastors that got in tough situations because of pictures. And,
Sure.
if you honor your wife, your spouse first, you will do things that might seem extreme by the world standards in order to honor them. So that's a great word.
I think the best way for people to get this type of education, to get this type of discernment, to get this type of examples is immersing yourself in some type of community. I think that will really aid in your development.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Aaron, we're getting in the end of our time here, but if you just want to let everyone know where they can connect with you, more about your mastermind, if they're interested in forming a community, the men that are listening, where can they find all that stuff?
Well, it's not just the men. We have women's masterminds as well. My wife, Robin, and my daughter, Brooke, are heading those up. And, or men, we have, like I said, about 20 groups right now that meet every single week. If you're interested in really exploring that further, I would invite you to go to viewfromthetop.com, and there's applications there that you can fill out. If you're wanting to like start your own group, you have a sphere of influence, you're a podcaster, a thought leader, a coach, and you want to develop a really nice stream of income, you can use our resource. It's called themastermindplaybook.com. Check that resource out. I teach you how to start, grow, and scale your own masterminds, and you can transform lives there like I've been discussing today, all the while making a very handsome income while you do it. And so, yeah, reach out to me, viewfromthetop.com. And Tim, I've enjoyed being your guest today.
Thank you very much, Aaron. God bless you, your ministry, your family. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. We'll see you.
Thank you for listening to the Everyday Discernment Podcast. For more information on Discerning Dad, go to discerning-dad.com. Be sure to follow on all the social media platforms. Just search for Discerning Dad. Please share this podcast with a friend and leave an honest review on whichever platform you listen. Feel free to send any comments, suggestions, questions, or prayer requests at discerningdad@outlook.com. Until next time, keep fighting the good fight.